Hi. Imagine two studies. One is a perfectly randomized experiment. Students are assigned by coin flip. There are careful controls. It's a clean design. The other is messy and observational. Researchers just watched what happened in the real world. Both find the same effect. Which one would you trust? You probably said the experiment, but actually the honest answer is it depends on what you're asking. And by the end of this video, you'll know exactly why. Here's where we are. In the last video, we established that if you see an association, two things that go together, there are almost always multiple causal stories that fit it. And if you make a causal claim, you're committed to a counterfactual you can't directly observe. What would have happened if things were different? So today's question is, if causal inference is that fragile, how does psychology ever make causal claims at all? This video gives you one powerful answer. Research design is how we get closer to the unobservable counterfactual. Not with magic, not with better statistics, with design logic. And by the end, I want you to have one skill. When you see a study, you can ask, how close does this design get us to what would have happened otherwise? And what alternative explanations are still alive? Let's establish one foundational principle before we go any further. Statistics cannot rescue a design that does not support causal inference. Statistics can estimate an association, statistics can quantify uncertainty, statistics can adjust for variables you measured. But statistics cannot create the missing counterfactual, remove unmeasured confounding, or fix biased group formation. If your groups were formed in a biased way, a sophisticated model can decorate that bias with decimals. So this week, we train the right instinct. When you want causal confidence, you don't begin with equations. You begin with design. Here's a core idea I want you to keep in your head. Research designs differ in how well they approximate the counterfactual. Think of designs as rungs on a ladder, where each rung gets you closer to the causal question you're actually asking. At the bottom, correlational designs. They tell you what goes together, but not what causes what. Higher up, quasi-experiments. They use real-world changes, policies, events, timing to get closer to the causal logic, but without random assignment. And at the top, randomized experiments. They are the most powerful approximation of the counterfactual we have. Now here's the thing about this ladder. None of these rungs are universally good or bad. They're tools. Each buys you something, each has costs. So now let's answer the obvious question. What exactly do experiments buy us? Experiments help because they change the causal logic. There are three core features. I want you to feel how each one reduces alternative explanations. Feature one, manipulation creates causal asymmetry. In an experiment, the researcher sets the value of something, a treatment, an intervention, a condition. That matters because it builds in temporal direction. The outcome cannot cause the manipulation. If I assign you to condition A or condition B before I measure your outcome, reverse causation gets much harder to claim. Cause first, effect second. That's not a detail, that's a causal upgrade. Feature two, comparison groups approximate the counterfactual. The counterfactual is what would have happened to you if you had been in the other condition. We can't observe that directly, so we build a stand-in, a comparison group that represents what would have happened otherwise. The closer the groups are at baseline, the better the counterfactual approximation. And that leads to the third feature. Feature three, Random assignment reduces systematic alternatives. Random assignment is powerful because it breaks the link between who you are and what condition you end up in. It doesn't guarantee perfect equality in every study. It guarantees something more important. Differences between groups are not systematic. They're not built into the group formation process. They're not driven by motivation, stress, wealth, personality, prior ability, because those things don't choose the condition. Random assignment makes confounding and selection explanations less plausible. Not impossible, less plausible. And that is exactly what design is doing. It's not proving causality, it's reducing the credibility of alternatives. So experiments are powerful, but they're not magic. Let's make this concrete with a real example. Let's use an example that became famous because it was finally designed strongly. The National Growth Mindset Study. The big claim, if students believe intelligence can be developed, they'll do better academically. Early evidence was messy. Small studies, correlational designs, weak controls. So Yeager and colleagues ran a large randomized trial in real schools. And here's the design in one sentence. Students within schools were randomly assigned to either a growth mindset intervention or a control activity, and then academic outcomes were tracked. What did this buy? Reverse causation is basically off the table. The intervention came first, grades came later. Selection explanations are reduced. Students didn't choose the intervention. Confounding is less plausible as the full explanation. Random assignment means pre-existing differences aren't systematically tied to condition. So if you see a difference later, the causal story becomes more credible. But, and this is crucial, even with a strong experiment, big questions remain. Because a strong design answers a specific causal question. Did this intervention in this context change this outcome? It doesn't automatically answer the bigger questions people actually care about, like, will it work everywhere? Will it last? Which component mattered? What's the mechanism? Is this the outcome, the one we care about? In this study, effects were modest and not uniform. Some schools showed more benefit than others, suggesting context mattered. That's not a failure, that's reality. So the meta lesson is, even in a top-tier, large, randomized experiment, causal inference is stronger, but never automatic. Experiments tighten the logic. They don't eliminate uncertainty. Now, the most important point of this video. If you misunderstand this, you'll misunderstand half of scientific arguments in psychology. Experiments do not solve causality. They reduce threats. And here's what I mean. Even in a randomized experiment, measurement can still be wrong. Random assignment doesn't make your measures valid. If you're measuring the wrong thing or measuring it badly, you can get a real causal effect on something that doesn't matter. Causal inference depends on measurement quality as well as assignment logic. And context still matters. Experiments give you internal validity within a specific setting. Whether that effect generalizes to other populations, timeframes, cultures, or real-world situations is always a separate question. A lab experiment can be causally clean and practically irrelevant. A messy quasi-experiment can be causally noisier and practically essential. This is why design involves trade-offs, not rankings. Finally, interpretation still matters. Even when the effect is real, you still have to ask, is it big enough to matter? Is it worth the cost? Is it actually driven by the mechanism people think it is? Data doesn't remove judgment. It disciplines it. So if you ever find yourself thinking, randomized experiment means causal proof, replace it with the accurate version. Randomized experiment equals fewer credible alternatives. Here's a quick check. You run a perfect randomized experiment, but your outcome measure is a self-report that participants fill out knowing which condition they were in. What threat does random assignment not protect you from here? Measurement bias. The design is strong, the measure might not be. Now we hit the real world. Many questions psychologists care about cannot be manipulated ethically or practically. We can't randomly assign trauma, poverty, divorce, chronic illness, years of smartphone exposure. So we use quasi-experiments, designs that exploit real-world variation to approximate causal logic without random assignment. Here's a concrete example of the logic. Suppose you want to know whether social media harms adolescent mental health. You can't run a randomized trial, but you might notice that different US states adopted broadband internet, and therefore heavy social media access at different times. If you compare adolescents in early adopting states to those in late adopting states, and those groups looked similar before adoption, you have a more credible counterfactual than simple correlation. The key move is always the same. Find a comparison that makes the counterfactual more plausible than just correlation. Sometimes it's a policy change. Sometimes it's timing. Sometimes it's a natural event. But here's what changes when you move down the ladder. In a randomized experiment, random assignment is your strongest argument. In a quasi-experiment, your reasoning is your strongest argument. There's no design feature doing the work for you. You have to make the case that your comparison group approximates what random assignment would have produced. And your causal confidence should scale with how credible that case is. Let's come back to the live controversy we introduced earlier. The claim that smartphones and social media cause declines in adolescent mental health. The reason this debate stays heated is not because one side cares and the other doesn't. It's because the ideal experiment is not feasible. You can't randomly assign adolescents to years of different social media exposure and enforce it. So the disagreement is really a design dispute. Take one specific flashpoint. Height points to correlational timelines. Mental health declined as smartphone use rose, and argues the convergence of evidence is enough to support causal claims. Orban points out that screen time is largely self-reported and measured inconsistently across studies, and that associations tend to shrink dramatically when you use device-tracked data instead. Same phenomenon, very different confidence about what the evidence shows. This is an important scientific lesson. Many big arguments are really arguments about design quality and thresholds. How close do you need to get to the counterfactual before you speak causally? Different scientists draw that line differently, and your job in this course is not to pick a team. It's to evaluate the design logic underneath the claims. Here's the norm I want you to take away from this lecture. Causal claims are obligations to rule out alternatives, not rewards for finding patterns. A causal claim is not a victory lap. It's a burden. You're saying, I have made the alternatives implausible enough that causation is the best explanation. Design is how we do that. Experiments buy you leverage. Quasi-experiments buy you realism if the comparison is credible. Correlations buy you patterns worth investigating. None give you everything. Scientific confidence comes from disciplined reasoning about what a design can and cannot justify. In the workshop, you'll practice this skill directly. You'll be given claims and study descriptions, and your job will be to diagnose what design is this? How close is it to the counterfactual? Which alternative explanations are still plausible? That's how we turn causality from a slogan into a method. Thanks. I'll see you in the workshop.